The meat dress. Probably the most outrageous look of the decade, if not all of pop culture. Worn by an artist at their creative peak, the dress shattered previous conceptions of what was acceptable on the red carpet, as well as what was seen as controversial, inspiring a whole new wave of stars in ridiculous, over-the-top haute couture as well as protest dressing on the red carpet. The meat dress is truly one of the most iconic pop culture moments of all time. Sunday, September 12, 2010, the 2010 VMAs. Lady Gaga had been nominated for a record-breaking 13 awards and was the first female ever to be nominated for the Video of the Year award twice in one night. She had to leave a lasting impression, and because she wasn't performing any songs that year, she had to perform through her fashion. The VMAs the year prior had been one of the most memorable award shows ever. Of course, the Kanye Taylor incident, then Gaga bleeding out in front of the whole nation, and one of the lesser known VMA moments of the night but still hilarious, Lil Mama crashing Jay-Z and Alicia Keys while they were on stage. Gaga had worn on that night 4 different outfits and gave her best performance ever, so she and the VMAs producers were probably scratching their heads trying to figure out how they were going to outdo last year's show. The seed had already been sown. The idea for the meat dress first came when Gaga wore a meat bikini of Vogue Homme Japan. The goal was to create a tie-in with the Vogue cover and also to perform in some way at the VMAs, since Gaga wasn't performing any song that night. Nicola Formichetti, Gaga's stylist at the time, decided to contact Frank Ferdinandez, a visual artist who had already worked with Gaga beforehand, creating this so-called Diamond Princess ensemble for the Bad Romance music video, as well as a headpiece for the Monster Ball, to ask Frank to help him bring his vision of a meat dress to life. They planned the dress out over a week, and Frank decided instead of following a specific dress pattern, they would rather just drape the different cuts of meat according to the cut size over a mannequin and then sew it all together. Frank obtained the meat from his family butcher, asking for the best meat for a dress, and received 50 pounds of matambre, a thin cut of beef like flank steak. He was told that the meat was very clean, sturdy, and wouldn't leak any blood. He also bought some meat string from a local butcher supply store and set to work. The meat dress was built onto a corset so the weight of the meat would be more evenly distributed, and the corset was set onto a mannequin where they would work on draping and sewing the meat for periods of time and then put it back into a freezer, allowing it to cool. The meat shoes were built over white pleaser heels and were tied up with pieces of string, as in Frank's words, "It's the meat you use to make a roast, where you roll it into a tortilla and put it in the oven, hence the shoes. That's why they were wrapped in butcher twine." The meat dress and shoes were then transported in several freezers to Gaga's backstage dressing room, where they were kept in the bathroom until she was ready for her final and most outrageous outfit change.
Lady Gaga's camp was pretty adamant about not having any furniture in the dressing rooms.
The day of the show, we were transporting her wardrobe over to the venue from her hotel in the morning.
We saw these coolers being brought in and realized that the reason that they needed the space was to house all of these coolers.
No one knew that these coolers contained the ingredients for one hell of a VMA dish.
Gaga arrived at the night in a custom Alexander McQueen dress, as well as heels from his second last collection, Plato's Atlantis, which were also seen in the Bad Romance music video. She was accompanied by 4 discharged servicewomen and men who had been let go because they had disclosed their sexuality in opposition to Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which Gaga was protesting against at the time. Later on in the night, she changed into a custom dress and headpiece by Armani Privé. Then finally, before the last award of the night, Video of the Year, was announced, she went backstage to change into the most iconic look of the night. She was slipped into the meat dress from below, which was already attached to the corset, and wore only some fishnet tights and a pair of pants underneath. The meat strips for the shoes were then layered over a pair of white platform pleaser boots, and then tied up with butcher store string. The outfit was then accessorized with a meat hat and a matching purse with a brooch and a crystal ring by Rodrigo Atazu. She wore a Maxi Swarovski crystal choker and bracelet on her right hand with a clawset ring, all by Giuseppe Zanatti. On her left hand, she wore an unsigned vintage bracelet from New York Vintage, as well as a flower-shaped ring by A. Morir. As no one, including the VMA producers, knew that Gaga was going to wear a meat dress on the night, when she walked out of her dressing room and into the award hall, she caused a real commotion.
I'm getting called that she needs to be in her seat. They give her kind of a 2-minute heads up. The door opens up. I see she's wearing a red dress, a matching red hairpiece, matching purse, matching shoes. I start to notice people staring a little bit harder than they normally would.
I was literally like this close to her. Just remember looking at it and just wondering, is that really?
And then I start looking at her dress and notice that it's not really a normal type of fabric. And I'm trying to pay attention to see what the white swirls are. And then it clicks that the ice chest was what was keeping the dress fresh.
What is it?
Is that real meat?
Is there a steak on her head?
I thought I was hearing things.
People who are on the floor, who are right around her, like, it's meat. Meat! Like, Ground chuck meat!
When she walked onto the stage, she helped to create another piece of art.
Oh my god, it's not funny.
The reaction to the meat dress was enormous and incredibly varied. It got the most attention out of all the events of the night, and as you can see from these Google searches at the time of the 2010 VMAs, Lady Gaga's meat dress was the most popular headline. It helped Gaga to protect her dominance over the rest of her female colleagues and helped Gaga's position as the most searched female artist of the time. As you can probably guess, animal rights activists were outraged at the dress and released statements to broadcast their immense disapproval. People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, or PETA as most people know them, had already released a statement about Gaga's meat bikini Vogue cover, saying, "No matter how beautifully it is presented, flesh from a tortured animal is flesh from a tortured animal. Meat represents bloody violence and suffering, so if that's the look they were going for, they achieved it." They would release another statement about the VMA's meat dress saying, "Wearing a dress made from cuts of dead cows is offensive enough to bring comment, but someone should whisper in her ear that more people are upset by the butchery than they are impressed by it." As well as that, many leading art critics questioned the dress' originality and inspiration. Brooks Barnes of the New York Times said that the dress was derived from Incarnation, a painting of a white-haired girl wearing a meat dress by artist Mike Ryden. Some in the artist and fashion press remarked on the dress' similarity to Vanitas, flesh dress for an albino anorectic, a meat dress made by sculptor Jana Sturbach in 1987, exhibited at the National Gallery of Canada in 1991. However, I think the general consensus is that it's a pretty iconic dress, even if some people don't approve.
Kind of disgusting, I guess, at first. The thought of meat, yeah.
Are you here for the dress?
Hell yeah!
And more than that, it's a dress with meaning. At the after show with Ellen, Gaga explained the message behind the dress and her reason for wearing it.
A lot of people saw you when you arrived on the white carpet, and you got out of a car and you brought some people from our armed forces with you, and I don't think people understood why, but explain what you did. It was amazing.
Well, actually, we're excited at this very moment because in the House of Representatives, it was just Don't Ask, Don't Tell was just overturned, which is it is a law that states that if a gay person has been either found out or reveals their sexual orientation, that if they're gay, they cannot be in the military. And it's a law that violates so much of what we stand as a generation, as free people, as America. And I wanted to bring them with me tonight because if we call Harry Reid on the phone and we tell him to schedule to vote in the Senate this month, we can get the bill to the president and get Don't Ask, Don't Tell changed.
Well, we will call Harry Reid.
It is a devastation to me that I know my fans who are gay, who feel like bad kids, they feel like they have oppression, governmental oppression on them, and that's actually why I wore the meat tonight.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Because you said that has something to do with it, and because I get, oddly enough, I get most of your outfits. I really do. But I saw the cover of the Vogue, Japanese Vogue, right?
Yes.
And you have a meat bikini on, and now I guess that's underneath the dress. But you have the meat bikini on, and then you have the meat dress. So what is because I'm vegan, and it's not, that's kind of...
Isn't that my luck?
Ironic. But anyway, what is the purpose of the meat?
Well, it's certainly no disrespect to anyone that's vegan or vegetarian. I, as you know, am the most judgment-free human being on the earth. However, it has many interpretations, but for me this evening, it's as if we don't stand up for what we believe in, if we don't fight for our rights, pretty soon we're going to have as much rights as the meat on our bones.
All right.
And I am not a piece of meat.
The dress would eventually be named by Time as a top fashion statement of 2010 and would be voted by fashion lovers on mycelebrityfashion.co.uk as the most iconic outfit of 2010, beating Kate Middleton's engagement dress into second place. It would also go on to be named as the defining look of the decade by many fashion publications. Gaga would go on to use the meat dress in the Born This Way ball and would have a whole act just dedicated to meat, but this time it's made of plastic. She would pick up the ham again in her Simpsons episode, as well as using the meat to make fun of herself in a 2013 SNL skit.
But are you sure you don't remember me? Perhaps you heard about the extravagant costumes I used to wear. Does this look familiar?
It looks like you tripped and fell at a deli.
Her last venture with the meat dress was actually in 2020, where she wore a whole new dress made of meat in her voting advocacy video, where she also wore a ton of other iconic outfits. After the VMAs, Gaga and the house agreed to loan the dress to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame Museum, but hoped it would be allowed to rot as a part of the exhibit. Thank God the creators didn't allow that to happen and instead convinced them that it should be dehydrated instead. They eventually sent the dress to master taxidermist Sergio Vigilato, who agreed to preserve the dress for $6,000 up front. The process took him 3.5 months and included killing the bacteria with bleach and detergent for 6 weeks, preserving the dress with formaldehyde and reconditioning the meat to make it semi-pliable so it could be reassembled. As fat cannot be preserved, he used white rubber to imitate the white strips of fat you can see on the original dress, and then dyed the whole dress a dark red to resemble the original color. Vigilato has said of his work that he is not proud of it. I know I could have made that identical dress, but Lady Gaga's team wanted something different, and I had to respect that. Although meat dresses or clothes made out of any type of food didn't become red carpet staples in the next decade of pop culture, the idea of using the red carpet as a platform for protest certainly did. In 2016, Julia Roberts removed her stilettos to walk barefoot along the Cannes Film Festival red carpet in response to the festival's heels-only rule for women. A move repeated 2 years later by Kirsten Stewart, who turned up to the festival wearing trainers before swiftly removing them. 2017 saw actors including Dakota Johnson, Evan Rachel Wood, and Noomi Rapace don suits at the Golden Globes and SAG Awards in a statement against patriarchal pressure. The following year, actors exclusively wore black on the Golden Globes red carpet to protest against sexual harassment in Hollywood following allegations against disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein. All of this and more is why the meat dress is certainly one of the most iconic pop culture moments of all time. Is the meat dress one of your favorite looks? Have you ever worn any meat? Do you like to wear any clothes at all? Let me know in the comments down below, like the video, and subscribe if you're new.
This is my Hannah Montana lip gloss. And I don't care what anyone says about this girl, that is amazing. I mean, she has her face on a lip gloss. When you meet